Welcome everyone to the Ask Me Anything About CST and PSP certification. We've assembled a panel of experts here to talk with you this evening. My name is Penny Woolery, and I'm the manager of certification and membership. And I will be one of your hosts this evening. Val, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Valerie Smith. I'm the Senior Credentialing Analyst in the Certification Department. And any questions or about your application, the exam process, scheduling for your PSP exam will come through me. I'm the one who reviews your applications. So if you have any questions about eligibility, I'm happy to help you out.
So just a matter of housekeeping. So our panel is here to answer any of your burning questions you have about certification, but you have to ask your questions in the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of your screen. You want to look for the Q&A icon. Refrain from using the chat. That's if you need to say something to one of the panelists or me, if you're having a problem hearing, technical issues, that's where you want to use chat. But all of your questions, so that they're in a queue, and Val will be able to get to them. Ask your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them and ask them for the entire group for the benefit of everyone. So I'm now going to introduce you to the chair of the certification board, Charlie Bolliard. It's all yours, Charlie.
Thanks, Penny. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us to discuss with you in this live webinar the Planning and Scheduling Professional Certification and the Certified Scheduling Technician Certification. Very happy to have with us this afternoon members of the PSP Committee of the Certification Board, Jim Simons, who is the chair, and Kim Forbes, who serves on that committee with Jim. And with that, we welcome your interactive discussion. So Valerie and Penny, if there are questions, we can get started.
There aren't any in the queue yet. I'll give people a chance to think about what they might want to ask. But we had some people or somebody who asked some questions who could not attend the webinar. So I can go ahead and start with those. But I can go ahead and answer this question really quickly. There's one that came in the queue. It says, if I don't pass the exam, is there a waiting period before I can schedule to take the exam again? If so, how long? So I'll go ahead and take that one. Let me backtrack a little bit and explain about our registration process. So when you register to take your exam, you've uploaded your documentation and you've paid for your exam, and then the notice comes to me to review it. For PSP exams, it usually takes about a business day or two for me to review. And if there's nothing wrong with your application, I will then send out your clearance email, which gives you scheduling instructions and a voucher code that you'll need to schedule your exam. So from that point on, you'll have 6 months in which to take your exam up to 3 times. 2 of them are at a reduced fee of $250. So recommendations for that: one, get your studying done before you register for your exam, because once you're cleared to sit for your exam, that 6-month period is going to fly by. Also, you have to take into account the grading cycles, which occur monthly. They happen on or around the 15th of every month. So what we do is we upload everybody's memos who've taken the exam during that period, and they get sent to our volunteers for grading. And the turnaround on that is usually between 2 and 3 weeks. So take into account the 6 months, schedule your exam right away, so that you have time within your registration period to have your memo scored, your results sent to you, and then if you need to take your exam over, you can do it at that time. If you exhaust your 6-month period, or you exhaust your 3 attempts, then you would have to begin a new registration period and pay for your exam again, the full amount for the fee, and there's no waiting time between that. Okay. Anybody else want to add anything before I get to the next question? Okay, next question is, how valued in the industry would you say the PSP certification is compared to, say, the PMP cert from PMI?
Well, I'll jump in on that one first. And so the PSP certification is a very rigorous certification examination. It's not something that, like others in the industry, where you can go to a class for a day and at the end of the class take a test and get a certification certificate. The PSP relies on your education, your training, the competencies that you've gained through your experience in the industry. So for me, the PSP is leagues above the PMI, PMP.
Anybody else want to add to that? Okay. Next question. If I choose to take the CST via the online proctoring process, can I still use the allowable open book materials? And the quick question to that is yes. Okay. The next question, what kind of content does the memo cover for the PSP? Is this an analysis type question whereby you are presenting an analysis to a stakeholder, project manager, program manager, construction manager, or whatever?
Well, this is Jim Simons. The memo problem is a situation that has, it's a typical situation of engineering or construction company where there are different alternatives to solving the problem. So you're presented with the problem and some alternatives. And the challenge is to analyze those alternatives and then suggest a solution. But we're doing this as a memo. So it's not a matter of just copying what we have down there as the facts, but in your own words, meld those facts and those solutions into a memo that can be acted upon by your manager. The key point here is communication. It's not analyzing. There's other parts of the exam that have to do more with analysis and so forth. This is a matter of communicating a problem to your manager so that it can be resolved and acted upon.
And I think you'll find that there are some really, really good resources. There is an article published in the AACE source about how to prepare for and successfully address the memo question. And then there's information on the AACE website at the Certification Hub that also addresses guidance on how to deal with the memo question.
I believe, Val, you put that in the chat, correct?
I did. I was just going to say, I put the link to that article in the chat for anybody to retrieve.
Thank you, Val.
Sure. Okay, the next question. Is it true that the memo writing exercise was removed from the PSP exam? And if so, what is the difference between the CST and the PSP?
No, it's not removed. It's still there, alive and well. The CST just doesn't have never had the memo section, but it is a very key point to the PSP exam.
So one of the differences is that the CST is set up for folks who are early in their career. based on either education or experience. And the PSP is set up for the professional practitioner, someone who's been doing scheduling for a number of years. And obviously you have to meet the eligibility criteria, but someone who's very well experienced and has seen a broad range of scenarios and actual project work. That's how I know to best describe the difference between the CST and the PSP.
And that's why the memo gets to be a key point. If you're just getting started in the business, you may not be that accustomed to communicating with, the next couple of levels of management. Whereas somebody who's a PSP really should be that experienced. They really should be able to take these facts and put them in a actionable memo to their manager, so that in fact the problem can be resolved. It ends up being, it's interesting if you know if you read the article that Charlie just mentioned in the source. That is a very good review of all the things that it takes to respond to the memo section of this exam. But it doesn't stop there. When you're in real life, when you're not just talking about an exam, being able to take a series of disparate actions and then meld them into an actionable memo is a very definite skill. And being able to read through that article that we did for the source gives you a skill that you can apply directly in your on a daily basis in your profession.
Also, I was just going to add that the CST is comprised of 100 simple multiple choice questions, whereas the PSP has 119 simple and complex scenario questions, and then the memo also. So there's definitely, it's a little bit more difficult. Okay, next question. Do you have any past tests or exams? I'm going to let you guys answer that and then explain why.
So our exam program, the certifications like the PSP are independently accredited. And because of the nature of all the process that we have to go through to achieve and sustain that accreditation, we don't hand out or pass out sample exams or old exams. There's quite a bit of information available in the study guide and in the references that are in the study guide. And so when you couple that information along with your personal career experience, that's how to best prepare for taking the PSP exam. I mean, I think back to when I took the exam, and I took it when it was still a manual exam, not on computer-based testing, but I logged my hours. One of the post-exam survey questions was, how long or how much time did you invest in studying? And I studied 100 hours to take the PSP, even though at the time I had 25 or 30 years of experience in the industry.
Okay, the next question. What would you say is the best source of study for the network diagram section?
I would say
Kim, you're muted.
Oh. I can hear Jim.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. I thought you said something, we couldn't hear you. No.
Oh.
Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, I would say there are a few general references that we all know from, I hate to be that generic about it. Not sure if we wanted to really plug a particular author, but there are some very well-known books, references on critical path methods and the calculations, both the old IJ and current precedence methods. And oh goodness, I guess there's really half a dozen or so. And we in fact include indications of those references in the study guide. So you can see those in the study guide. You can also see them as references, as being referenced back in the recommended practices. So there are some books, but it's really such common knowledge. It's the sort of thing that we've lived with for years, and you can probably go through some of those books and be well versed in it. If you didn't know what IJ was and you had to work with IJ and you had to know what IJ is, IJ scheduling, do some practices. Don't just read about it, but actually do some practice networks so that you fully understand it. If you didn't do IJ, eons ago, get some practice in it. Now everybody's now into precedence, so you should know precedence pretty well. But even in precedence, one of the things that we emphasize in the exam and the questions and the way they're written is good practice. There are little tricks that you can use to play games with precedents, and we don't subscribe to those. And it's very clear in the way the questions are written that we want you to do things the correct way, and we're looking for the correct answer, not some answer that just satisfied today's particular little management problem.
So I think a really good reference in addition to the study guide is the recommended practices that are available on the AACE website. And at my last count, there were 24, perhaps 25 recommended practices that deal with CPM scheduling. And you can find those very readily through the AACE website, and then the technical resources tab, and then the recommended practices tab.
I just put
to-
in the,
Oh.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to add, Charlie was talking about his number of hours studied. I spent a number of hours just working through mock networks, doing the forwards and backwards passes that my study group had just come up with. So that would be another good way to prepare for the network diagrams.
I did put in the chat the PSP study guide, the direct link to the 3 recommended practices that are listed on the recommended study materials list, and then a link to all of the RPs to make it easy for you, and you can easily do a search on the recommended practices that you want. Okay, next question. I'd be curious to hear what you find or found to be the most challenging part of the certification process.
I'll start off by, I'm in Charlie's boat. I took it so long ago, it's not computer based. it wasn't computer based. I will say that I was working in the industry, really studied well, and I don't know. I can't say what part I found the hardest.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest part was the multiple choice questions, because of the tendency to read rapidly. So I had to consciously slow myself down so that I read the question thoroughly and in context, and you know, had a good understanding of the question before I marked the answer.
I'm going to add to what they've said. I have not taken the certification exam. It is not my field. But some feedback that I've gotten for the computer-based testing has been one, the 5-hour block, which is a long time to be sitting and taking an exam. So you have to kind of plan for when you want to take it, like through in the course of the day. You can take breaks, whether you take it at a testing center or online, but your time continues to count down. So you know, generally people just take quick bio breaks and they're back at it. Also, probably one of the challenging things for the PSP exam, if you take it via online proctoring, is that the network diagram is very small, and to navigate it you have to use a split screen and you have to scroll back and forth. And if you're taking it on a laptop, if you're like me, I can't see, like I have to get right up on it. And a lot of people have had that complaint also, that it's just too small of a space to really see that diagram. We do recommend that you take your exam at a testing center that will have monitors and the setup that you need in order to better see that network diagram. Or if you're going to take it at home or at your office, whatever, with through online proctoring, have a laptop closed. You have to have it closed, but connected to a monitor with an external camera, and that's going to be the best way for you to see that network diagram. Anybody else want to add anything?
I think that's a good point, Val, because we see a lot of comments about just physically reading those diagrams, because they're very visual. You have to look at them closely. That's a challenge.
Yeah, and I do know that some people have like copied the diagram onto their scratch paper so they can visualize it better. You can have scratch paper whether you take your exam on site or at, you know, via online proctoring also. So that's something that might be helpful. Okay, next question. Are there any guidelines on the network diagram section? By that, I mean a full example like the one that comes in the exam.
Not as such. The network diagrams and the way the network diagrams are done is explained in the or is explained in the study guide. And one of the perhaps considerations that any applicant should have is being able to read the study guide and understand the study guide. And if you don't understand the study guide or some facet of the study guide, then go do some more detailed research. If you don't understand the practices or the graphics in the study guide, you know, for the network diagrams, then do some more research in network diagrams. Not everybody does them the same, but these are very standard and very readable. And there's no tricks in the study guide. I mean, in the network diagrams. This is the facts, and it's clear, but you have to understand how the facts are presented in real life network diagrams. So read the study guide, and if you've got questions, then do further research into it.
And just to add to that, that goes back to my last answer. It's good to have a study group with other people. And we took this, you can take the study guide and do those mock networks and make sure that you can fill in all the blanks that maybe somebody else made an example for you. So you don't know what's being taken out, and they can take it out for you and see if you can fill those networks in. Would be one way to, get a full, you're saying here, a full example, that would give you that opportunity.
Okay, next question. Can you please define scheduler with respect to the exam questions? Essentially, where in the industry does a scheduler reside? I work on the owner side as a scheduler, although from the exam study material, I get the impression that the scheduler is working from a general contractor side.
I don't think it's exclusive. I think you could be a general contractor, you could be an owner, you could be an engineer, you could be the government. You can be a lot of places and be a scheduler. It's not really restricted to that. But then the nature of the work and the nature of the responsibilities, the flow of the work is really generic and really appropriate for all those different entities. There, you can skip from one side of the fence to the other, going from a GC to an AE or something, and it's not that much different. And the basics are the same, no matter what facet of the industry you're in, or even if you're in construction. We have a lot of members, I mean, a lot of members that are in pharmaceuticals and aerospace and God knows what else. And they think that, oh, well, this is just construction. And then you get into a real problem with them and they say, oh, well, yeah, well, we do it like that because that's logical and that's how you do it. And I said, that's the same way we do it in construction. You've got a problem, you've got a project, you have to resolve the schedule for the project, all the breaking it into its elements, how the elements relate to each other. All this is the same no matter what kind of an industry you're in. And if you stop and think about it, our certifications are agnostic towards any particular industry. So maybe if you get tired of working for a GC, you can go over into pharmaceuticals for a while, or some part of the nuclear industry or whatever. Just depends. If you've got the PSP, now you've got your ticket punched that in fact maybe you do have some background and to understand what can be done or what you can do, let's say, to make yourself useful and valuable to any type of a client.
Here's a fun fact. A few years ago, somebody sat for the exam who was in the music industry.
Huh, okay.
And it's not unusual for us to have folks who are in, what I call the IT industry, but software development, because they have projects and they have schedules for their projects. So to Jim's point, it is neutral to or across any number of industries.
Okay, next question. Let me reword this just a little bit. How much of the activity in the exam, how many activity logic diagram questions, let's do it that way, should they expect in the PSP exam?
Well, I think there's a breakdown in the study guide, and I don't have it committed to memory, but it gives you the percentages of kind of the categories in which the questions are arranged, and it's a general or generic breakdown of what topics are covered in the exam. And because the examination questions are totally random at any point in time, it's not going to always be the same or be exactly those percentages that are in the study guide, but it'll be close.
Next question. Are there any sections on forensic scheduling or schedule review?
So without getting into question content, and I'm going to jump in on that one, I think you should expect that the questions are going to cover everything across the full realm of scheduling. So that would be from the basics of schedule development through updates, through perhaps prospective analysis, through retrospective analysis, reporting, everything that goes along with scheduling. If you're looking for, the very rigorous schedule analysis type examination, then look to the CFCC.
Okay. Next question. From the panel's experience, how has the PSP certification helped them in their career? How or what aspects do they think the certification will help in my career as a young project controller? What advice would be given when preparing for the PSP exam? It's a great question.
So I'm going to start that one off here with your kind of combining your first and second question. It has helped my career tremendously through particularly networking, that, and also being able to clients understand when they understand what it is, they actually ask you to sit in on meetings. A lot of our specifications require somebody to hold their PSP to do the analysis and sit in on meetings. So without that, I wouldn't be able to participate with those clients. And then also the network aspect. I know if I have a question regarding schedule, claims, risk, any of the facet that AACE covers, I know people that I can reach out to and get an answer or talk through something with. I think that's the best benefit. So using AACE as a network opportunity, definitely take advantage of that whenever you can.
Well, I'll jump in. Thanks, Kim. I think that was a great explanation. For me, I took the exam in April of 2004 and then provided expert testimony in a delay case on a federal contract in December of 2004. And the judge who heard the case took particular note of the fact that I had achieved the PSP certification. And I can't attest to exactly how much weight she gave to that, but she did mention in the opinion that I did have the certification. And so it as an example is one way that the PSP or any of the certifications can support or bolster your career. And I think everyone has slightly different experiences. So within our company where I work, if someone achieves the PSP certification, then they get change in salary and it helps their advancement up through the various positions that we have in our company. So it keeps people upwardly mobile.
And to say, if this is the same Jessica I met at the symposium, here's your network. So I do remember you. So hopefully it's the same lady. So that's building your network. And I also know that you already have a great network.
Hello, Jessica.
Jim, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think one of the things that, if I've got somebody that's applying for a position, if I see a resume come in with a PSP, I really give that more emphasis than I would for a PMP certification, because the PSP tells me that they're really into planning and scheduling. And they've demonstrated a certain level of knowledge in those areas. Now, if somebody just comes in with a resume that doesn't have that certification, and they did this and they did that and they did something else, and they're just wonderful, and we just have to hire them because they're such great people. Well, if you're so good, why didn't you get a certification? Oh, well, I don't want to get a certification because it's just a waste of my time. I already know all that stuff. Well, prove it. Take the time to prove it. Be professional and prove that you, in fact, can satisfy that certification. I only got involved with AACE, in '97 when I joined, because I could see that that was a professional organization that had professional documents that gave me the background that I could go to in fact, find the answers, because there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that is in these RPs is really good information. Then when the PSP exam came up, I'm like Charlie, except I was a couple of months after him. I was in August of 2004. And I saw the PSP exam. I said, I want to take that exam because I want to see if I've got that level of expertise, and not just in some particular narrow band of skills in this profession, but really the whole thing of planning and scheduling. Do I have that certification, that level? And so I got the certification and was successful with it. And I recommend it to anybody that in fact is in this business. Go out and prove to yourself and everybody else your level of knowledge and experience, and the fact that you can in fact test well at it.
Well, I think you made a good point there, Jim, and I'm going to add a little bit to what you said. It's important for your own personal growth and advancement within your company, but the other thing that can help your company is when they're looking for teaming partners to pursue a particular project, or maybe going to a client and being able to say to the client, we have these people, we're going to have these people on your project and they all have this PSP certification. Or to Kim's point from a little bit earlier, the potential client's requirements for the project require the PSP. And so it has, importance for you individually, but it also has importance for your employer.
Okay. Next question. Typically, testing center monitors are very poor quality. Last time I passed an online proctored professional certification exam. Anyone know in general if the certified testing centers have improved the quality of their monitors? PDM, ADM, or any other detailed or large diagrams which necessitate scrolling can be challenging. It is good advice, as mentioned earlier, to copy the network diagrams onto paper. I did that when I took and passed the PMI PMP exam for the network diagramming questions, but it took time. So I don't really know exactly how to answer that, except that Criterion does have standards that each testing center has to meet. AACE doesn't have control over the hardware in any of the testing centers. We don't really know. There are so many testing centers, like there's no way for us to know. If you go to a center and you find that the monitor is of poor quality, if it's too small, always let me know, headquarters know right away, and we will contact Criterion and get that rectified. That means that they would have to go back to the testing center, investigate, and they would have to make sure that the testing center improved the quality of their equipment. That would be a situation if you're not willing to take that chance. And I've only had one person that in my recollection that has complained about the size of the monitor, specifically that maybe it would be one where you would take it via online proctoring at home with your own equipment, with your own monitor, so that you know the quality of that. Just keeping in mind that you do have to have an external camera when you do that, and you have to keep your laptop closed. Hope that answers the question. Okay, next question is, what kind of verification of employment is AACE looking for? I'll go ahead and field this one also. Basically, we're looking for a letter from your employer giving the dates of your service, and your title. And if your title is one that's vague, say like consultant or assistant or administrator, then we would need a brief description of your duties, but there's no template or anything. It's just a very easy, basic letter. If you are substituting 4 years of industry-related education for 4 years of your experience, then you only need to provide 4 years. You don't have to go back, into all of your employment history for that. Also, if your current employer, if you have not been there for the amount of time that you need to verify your experience, a lot of times employers do background checks as part of your hiring process. So most employers will verify that they've checked your prior experience and that you've met X amount of years, or they list out where you've worked before. Some people will have them initial verification of a resume, which is fine, but a resume is not something that's accepted as standalone, because that's not something that's verified. That's something that candidate themselves have written. So hope that is clear. We try to make it as easy as possible, but giving us the information we need. Next question, is there a significant emphasis on resource loaded and or cost loaded schedules as part of the exam? I see a lot of questions that have been on network logic, but I have found crew loading and quantity tracking in the schedule to be equally challenging and important.
Yes, there are some cost loaded and resource loaded questions and schedules, but they're really not as comprehensive as some real life examples. So if you know the basics of why you're doing it and how it's done, you shouldn't have a problem with it.
Okay, the next one, we've kind of gone over this before, but if you guys want to refresh, how does someone prepare himself, herself for the logic diagram and questions regarding the logic diagram?
Practice.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Practice. Go through and do it. Look at different examples. It was never a problem with me because that was the sort of thing that I did on a daily basis. And in fact, did before we did it with computers. So we really need to know the basics of it and run through the calculations. And like Charlie says, practice.
Okay, that ends the questions that are in the queue. I was going to ask some questions that were sent in prior to the webinar because this person couldn't attend. So I'm going to go ahead and ask those now if everybody's good with that. Seeing the list of study aids, reference materials, which the list is lengthy and good, but wanted to inquire as to if there are any examples of the PSP questions to look through, at least to look at an example of what to expect on the PSP exam.
So
What-
those would be the questions within the study guide, would be the first place to start with example questions.
Yeah, the study guide includes all the topics that are in the exam. And if you know the study guide, if you read through the study guide and you feel confident that you know that you have very good knowledge of every facet of the study guide, then you'll do well on the exam. But if you're feeling a little soft on some area, go back and do some more research until you really know it. And the same thing and in fact, to give you some idea of it, there are questions in the study guide in each one of these areas to give you some flavor of what the questions in the exam are. But know the study guide. Make sure that you're confirming your level of knowledge with the study guide.
Another place to look for examples, and we talked a little bit earlier about the recommended practices, but also on the website is access to professional practice guides, PPGs, and these are papers or presentations that are developed by subject matter experts. And you could look to the professional practice guides for something different in the way of study and preparation.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to type in the chat also. All right, the next one, what types of exam questions, 119 multiple choice is seen, can be expected, or what can be the main topics covered on this PSP exam? So I think that we're looking at, there are simple multiple choice questions. And then the complex questions. Am I reading the question right? Maybe I'm not.
Yeah, I think you are, Valerie, and Penny has shared on the screen a shot of the website, and you can see that it discusses the domains. So out of the 3 domains in the 119 multiple choice questions, basic planning and scheduling, approximately 56 questions. The practical exercise, about 29 questions, and then applications of planning and scheduling, 34 or so questions. And that's just, a general guide or general breakdown. You may have 1 or 2 more or 1 or 2 less, depending upon how the exam comes out in the random selection of questions. And then there is, it also talks about the communication domain, which is the memo writing question.
So I just wanted to let everyone to know, expectation wise, manage your time. It was briefly discussed earlier. Managing your time of that 5-hour window that you have. Here's what you can expect in the exam. You're going to get your first domain, which is basic planning and scheduling knowledge, and that's 56 questions. Then your 57th question is going to be your memo. So it's earlier in the exam. Then when you're done writing your memo, or if you choose to mark it and come back later, because you can do that, you can then continue with all of the other multiple choice questions. And then you're going to have topic 3, which is practical exercises. That is where you're going to refer to the network. And then you're going to have your planning and scheduling application questions that ends the exam. At any given time, you can mark any question to say, I want to review this later. So that when, and there is a tutorial on our website as well that will demonstrate how you do this, but that way, when you do a summary of all, when you get to the end of the exam, when you think you're done with everything, you'll see an asterisk by every question that you marked. So that allows you to visually see, to go back to those questions and look at them again. But I just want to emphasize that you're going to have 56 multiple choice questions, and then you're presented your memo. So if you spend, and it's probably a good gauge by how many you're able to answer. Look at your timer, how much time. The timer is right on your screen. It'll tell you how much time you have left. So when you get done with your multiple choice questions, you may want to look to see about how long did it take me to do that, which might be able to help you gauge maybe a little bit more time for topic 3, which is the practical exercise, because you're going to be looking on one side of your screen to the network and then come back to answer the question. You just want to make sure you use your time wisely, because if you spend a great deal of time writing the memo and finessing it, you may run out of time when you get to the multiple choice questions. So I'm just going to say it again, use your time wisely. But that is the order in which the exams, they're all randomized. The questions are randomized, but that is the order and the way the exam will be presented to you. I hope that makes sense.
I know that we're running short on time. I'm going to get this question in, and we have at least 2 more in the queue. So I'm going to say this kind of quickly. Is there a synopsis of focus areas that would be covered in the PSP exam? If so, is it something that appears within any of the study materials references listed on the website? Been in the construction management profession for many, many years and scheduler planner in most of all of them. I'm not going to list in what roles. And now looking to see where the focus efforts on this would be needed. So is there like one place that you would recommend that this person could look to find what's going to be like topics that would be covered on the exam?
I would say there's 2 places to look, and that would be the study guide and the part of the website that Penny has shared on her screen at this point in time, and then work from there.
Okay. For the memo, are there any tolerances for grammatical errors for international candidates who are not native English speakers? It's a great question.
We consider, we understand that international students who, for whom English is not their first language, might have some difficulties. So that as we grade the memos, our specific guidance to the graders is to read through, let's say the marginal English. If in fact something's spelled wrong, okay, it's spelled wrong, but I know what the word was. If there's a preposition in the wrong place, or sentences run on, okay, that's fine. But did the applicant really know, did they really have an understanding? Did they demonstrate an understanding of the problem? Did they describe the solutions? Did they make a good recommendation? And that really doesn't, so we're really not considering grammar and so forth, because we want to we understand the problem with international students, and we want them to have as much advantage to this as possible.
Hope that answers that question. If you have a good bit of industry scheduling experience, is there much learning to be had while going through the study prep? Or maybe to ask another way, Did the panel learn any new skills or techniques or knowledge they didn't already have prior to their exam prep?
Hmm. Well,
Go ahead, Jim, go ahead.
I can say not really, because when I joined AACE, I already had 30 years in the industry. And I, starting in IJ, before there was any inkling of whatever precedence was going to be. So I've seen a lot of that. I've worked with a general contractor for many, many years as a consultant on different industries. So you see a lot, and you're dealing with a lot of schedules done by other people, and you make schedules yourselves. So you see a lot of things. If you're in a particular, a singular industry for a long time, and you're not seeing the work of other people, or other industries or other firms, you might be in a very myopic situation. In which case, it would really help to expand into what's done in other industries. And that's one of the ways you do this, is in fact understanding what we have in our recommended practices, because there's a lot of different industries that are represented there, and a lot of different aspects of scheduling and planning. Understanding what's in the RPs and some of the very, very esoteric, in some places, very targeted areas that the RPs cover. Linear schedules. That's something that has really taken off in the last 15 or 20 years. So that's the sort of thing that we talk about. But we don't test on linear schedules, but you should know that as a technique.
And to add to what Jim said, I too had a lot of experience in the industry before taking it. And what I gathered was what Penny just went through. The flow of the exam was what being prepared to understand what's going to be thrown at you next was the most important part to me, and what I think helped me the most.
Awesome. I know we're getting close on time. We have one question in the actual chat that we're going to get to before we end. And it says, and it's asking a number of questions, but then at the very end, it gets to the meat of what the real question is. So bear with me. Is the AACE PSP Study Guide second edition with a June 2019 publication date the most recent? It's what this person sees on our website. Is there a third edition being worked on? And if so, is there a target publication year or year, half year? The question is really this. Is there a future year or a half year when the exam cert prep may reference any new material and say a third edition? I understand fully the experiential nature of the PSP and that the study guide is only an aid. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that while we work cooperatively with the technical board who writes or oversees the recommended practices, which all our exams are built upon, the education board does all of our study materials, including the PSP study guide. So I just wanted to, I'm not going to answer the question, I'm going to leave it for the professionals, but I wanted to just distinguish that you've got three bodies that are focusing on one area, but they do all work cooperatively together. So the question is there any anticipation? And I'm going to go based on my gut of what this is saying, that if a person were to buy material and want to take this exam now, let's say, within the next year or so or a half year, would there be any expectation that there would be a third edition coming out that would change the nature of not only the study material, but what they could expect to see on the exam?
So let me address that one, please. So the current edition of the study guide is what is listed on the website. And yes, the education board is in the process of reviewing all the study guides for all the exams and gauging how and what needs to be changed. But as we sit here right now, there's not a specific schedule that says within the next 6 months or within the next year, there will be a third edition of the PSP study guide. So the advice that I would give you now is be guided by the current study guide. Do your preparation and take the exam at the earliest possible date.
There's a follow-up to this person's question, I think based on something that Jim had mentioned previously answering the other question. It says earned schedule. Is that potentially on the PSP exam? It's newer technique and I'm familiar and at time have recommended this.
I think it should be. I think I'm a big fan of earned schedule. I don't think it's in there now. But I think that should be in the future.
We do have a number of new questions in the pike, so maybe earned schedule is going to eventually be on the exam. So we're constantly vetting new questions to import into our data bank so that it stays fresh and new. And the fact that this attendee is saying it's a newer technique and he's familiar with it, yeah, it should be reflected in the exam, and I'm sure that that's something that we're working on. So I know that there was one other attendee question that was asking about what to use as the study to prep for the exam. And just as this question that we just answered and Charlie said, really it's based on experience, but use your best guess of what would work best for you. Studying the RPs that are related to the exam, but the study guide is useful. And what's listed on our website is the most current version and what our exams are based on at this moment. It takes time when anything changes for them to become in effect. So I don't think that most of you, I'm sorry, I don't think that any of you would need to worry about if you submitted your application for this exam right now, that you could see any sweeping changes that would be reflected in a new study guide. It takes time for those things to happen. So I'm giving you some assurances there that we feel confident that your current study guide is going to be a good resource for you. We are at time. As a matter of fact, we're at 3 minutes over. We appreciate you hanging in there with us. Thank you to the panelists for giving us your valuable time and your expertise to field all of these questions. And most importantly, thank you for all you attendees for spending your time and learning more about certification, specifically PSP or CST certification. We so look forward to having your application come across our desk so that we can one day send you an email and congratulate you on achieving your certification. Valerie did put in the chat, if you have any questions at any given time, email us at certification@aacei.org, and we'll be sure to get an answer to you shortly. With that, have a nice evening or day. I don't know what time zone you're in, but thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time.